According to multiple law enforcement sources, Kada Scott was shot to death. Now Keon King is charged with murder, abuse of corpse, tampering with evidence, and firearms violations, among others.
So a couple days after that, me and my best friend get on the phone and we're basically just, talking about the Kada situation. And she says that she thinks that I should call the cops. So she was basically saying that she thinks that I should call the cops and tell them that Keon was, asking about Kada. Now, at the time in my head, I'm thinking that there was no reason to call the cops. He already turned himself in, and I felt like it would be kind of a waste of time to tell them that the guy that they already have in custody, called me and was asking about the girl. And me personally, I'm not a cop caller. Like I don't call the cops. That's just the way that I grew up. That's what I was around. They will always tell me.
So in terms of your first question about the tip, what I can share is that obviously initially we received a tip to go to a meeting last week. We received a tip to go to the Ada Lewis Middle School. Investigators went, did a thorough search. Essentially what the new tip was this weekend was go back. It was go back. She's there. Look again. And they did give more specific details in terms of where to look. And ultimately that is what led us to her. I'm not going to say how. Obviously, we are investigating the tip, and we'll continue to do that. But the tip was more specific than the first. It was very specific to go back, and it was more specific in terms of where to look. And that is what the police did.
So then we hung up the phone, and then I believe she called me again with the police on the other line. So you could see, I told her, I'm sorry, I'm not talking to the cops. And yeah, now I can't see how this could be cruel, and I do take accountability for that. So then a couple of days later after that, I get sent a link on Instagram, and the link was basically my best friend going live, just talking about the situation, saying how I was weird for not going to the cops, and people in the comments were just coming up with their own narratives about the story, and it just got way out of hand and it just spiraled. So you can see somebody sent me the link of the live, and still to this day, I have not watched the full entire live. Then people just started asking, who is Gabby? What's the connection? And, she told people that I was in Maryland for school, and it was just a whole entire thing. So, of course, I was angry and I was confused because what is going on? So I text her. I tell her that, that was weird. And yeah. Then I started seeing posts of people saying that they think that I set Kada up, and that why wouldn't I go to the cops, and that I was just suspicious and all of this stuff. And this
just when everyone thought the Kada Scott case couldn't get any darker, investigators dropped new evidence that's straight out of a horror movie. Court documents now confirm that Kada was shot to death, and the man accused, Keon King, is facing a mountain of charges: murder, abuse of a corpse, evidence tampering, arson, and more. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. King wasn't acting alone. Surveillance footage shows him returning to the crime scene the very next night, this time with someone else, and what they were caught doing on camera is absolutely chilling. Just when the public thought the Kada Scott case had reached its breaking point, investigators dropped a bombshell that has everyone reeling. Newly unsealed documents confirm what many feared most. Kada wasn't just missing, she was murdered. The 22-year-old nursing assistant, who vanished earlier this month, was found in a shallow grave behind an abandoned middle school in Germantown. And now, police say they have irrefutable proof that she was shot to death, a brutal end to a story that's already shaken the entire community. The man at the center of it all, Keon King, is facing an avalanche of charges: murder, abuse of a corpse, evidence tampering, arson, kidnapping, and firearm violations, just to name a few. But what's sending chills down everyone's spine is the latest twist. King didn't act alone. Surveillance footage reportedly shows him returning to the crime scene the very next night. Only this time, he wasn't by himself. Another person was caught on camera, helping him carry something heavy toward the very spot where Kada's remains were later discovered. The footage alone has completely changed the direction of this investigation, raising questions about who this second person is and why they were helping cover up such a horrific crime. And if that wasn't enough, there's now growing suspicion surrounding a woman named Gabby, who has somehow found herself tangled in this web of tragedy. Her story keeps changing, her posts keep disappearing, and the more she talks, the more people are convinced she knows far more than she's letting on. Because as the evidence piles up, one thing's becoming painfully clear. The murder of Kada Scott wasn't a random act of violence. It was planned, covered up, and possibly assisted by someone who's still out there. And now, all eyes are turning toward Gabby, a woman whose role in this case might be a lot more suspicious than anyone initially realized. On the night of October 4th, everything seemed normal for Kada Scott. She said goodbye to her mother, grabbed her bag, and headed out for her evening shift at a local nursing home in Chestnut Hill, a job she genuinely loved. But somewhere between clocking in and clocking out, something went horribly wrong. Coworkers later told investigators that Kada had been acting anxious, pacing near the staff lounge and whispering urgently on her phone. At one point, a colleague overheard her say, "I can't believe you're calling me about this," before she walked out into the parking lot toward a dark-colored car. And that was the last time anyone saw her alive. When Kada didn't show up for her next shift the following day, her family knew something was wrong. Her mother immediately called police, reporting that her daughter had been getting strange calls and messages from someone she used to know, a man named Keon King. Within hours, detectives started piecing together a digital trail that painted a chilling timeline of her final moments. According to court records, Kada's phone received a dozen calls from King that night, starting around 9:25 p.m. and continuing for nearly an hour. The tone of their messages was unsettlingly familiar. Kada had texted him, "Kid me again," to which King replied, "Better be up too," suggesting some kind of twisted inside joke between the two. Minutes later, her phone's signal placed her at Aubrey Recreation Center, next to Ada H. Lewis Middle School, a location that would later become the site of her shallow grave. At exactly 10:24 p.m., Kada's phone went completely dark. No signal, no calls, no messages. Investigators believe that was the moment everything ended. The next day, police traced King's gold Toyota Camry to an apartment lot nearby. Inside, they found evidence suggesting that Kada had been there, but not alive. From there, the case unfolded rapidly. Burned-out vehicles, conflicting stories, and chilling surveillance footage that would later confirm everyone's worst fear. In just one night, Kada Scott went from an ordinary young woman finishing a shift to the victim of a meticulously planned murder. And the way her final hours unfolded, the phone calls, the fear, the sudden silence, still sends shivers down anyone who's followed this case. As detectives dug deeper into Kada Scott's disappearance, what they uncovered next turned the investigation from tragic to absolutely chilling. Newly released surveillance footage showed Keon King at the Aubrey Recreation Center just hours after Kada vanished. The video captured him stepping out of a black stolen vehicle, walking calmly through the lot like nothing was wrong. He didn't seem nervous or rushed. He looked calculated. Then, as if it were a scene straight out of a crime thriller, King disappeared from the camera's view, only to return the very next night, and this time, he wasn't alone. In the second clip, a gold-colored car pulled up under the cover of darkness. King got out, and a second unidentified person followed right behind him. What happened next still haunts investigators. The footage shows the two of them carrying a large, heavy object wrapped in what looks like a dark tarp or plastic, across the lot toward the wooded area behind the recreation center, the exact spot where Kada's remains would later be discovered. The struggle in their movements, the way they moved in sync, almost like they'd rehearsed it, it all pointed to one horrifying conclusion. This was the disposal of her body. After dropping off the object, the figures are seen walking away into the night. But the story doesn't end there. Just hours later, King reportedly returned alone, slipped behind the wheel of that same black stolen car. It drove off. What happened next made investigators' blood run cold. The vehicle was later found engulfed in flames, burning so intensely that it melted the interior down to the frame. Every trace of DNA, Fingerprints, fibers gone. Fire investigators determined the blaze wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. Someone wanted to make sure that car, and whatever evidence it held, would never tell its story. The fire turned what could have been a crucial crime scene into ashes, like someone wanted to erase the truth itself. But even with the destruction, the surveillance footage didn't lie. It gave prosecutors the smoking gun they needed. Proof that King returned to the scene, proof that someone helped him, and proof that Kada's final resting place wasn't chosen by chance. It was planned, calculated, and covered up in the most sinister way imaginable. Before that night spiraled into tragedy, Kada Scott and Keon King shared a complicated, unsettling history, one that now reads like a slow, deliberate setup. Through phone records, text messages, and witness statements, investigators pieced together a disturbing digital trail that exposed the dark undercurrent of their connection. It wasn't random. It wasn't sudden. It was something that had been brewing beneath the surface, a toxic dynamic built on control, manipulation, and fear. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Kada confided in friends that King had been calling and texting her nonstop. She told them he'd been acting weird, and that she felt uneasy every time his name popped up on her screen. But despite that fear, there was a strange familiarity in their exchanges, almost like she'd grown used to the chaos he brought into her life. That eerie tone is captured in one of the most chilling text exchanges recovered from her phone. At around 9:25 p.m. on October 4th, Kada sent King a message that read, "Kid me again." It's the kind of text that feels playful at first glance, like an inside joke between two people who've been through something before. But once you know what happened next, that message hits like a gut punch, because it would be the last one she ever sent. King replied just minutes later with a simple but haunting response, "Better be up too." He followed up with several missed calls, as if trying to make sure she wouldn't change her mind. From that moment on, his phone and Kada's were moving in the same direction, toward the Aubrey Recreation Center, where she would never be seen alive again. Police say cell tower data confirmed that their devices traveled together before Kada's phone went silent forever at 10:24 p.m. Investigators believe that message, "Kid me again," wasn't just banter. It was bait, part of a manipulative game King had been playing for weeks. He knew how to pull her back in, how to make her feel like she could handle him, like this was just another argument or another night they'd talk things out. But behind those texts was something far darker, a man laying a trap, luring her into one last meeting he knew she wouldn't walk away from. To anyone else, it might have looked like a late-night rendezvous between two people with unfinished business. But to those who've seen the evidence, it's heartbreakingly clear. This was premeditation disguised as affection. King didn't just lure Kada out that night. He orchestrated every second of it, right down to her final words on that phone. But while Keon King now sits behind bars, charged with Kada Scott's murder, the focus of the investigation and the internet's fury has shifted to someone else entirely. A woman named Gabby. Her name keeps popping up in connection to this case, and the more people dig into her story, the more contradictions they find. Gabby isn't just some bystander who knew King. She's someone who, by her own admission, was talking to him right before Kada disappeared. And yet, instead of alerting police, she decided to stay silent, a choice that's now drawing heavy scrutiny. According to Gabby's own posts, she and King had been friends for a while. She says that before Kada went missing, King called her out of nowhere and asked if she knew a girl named Kada Scott, mentioning that she lived close by. Gabby told him that she did know of her, but not personally. That might have seemed innocent at first, but here's where things get strange. Instead of questioning why he was asking about a woman who would go missing hours later, Gabby claimed she didn't think much of it. Even after learning about Kada's disappearance, she admitted she never went to the police, not even to share that conversation. When questioned online about it, Gabby tried to defend herself, saying, "I didn't know anything. Me and Keon were just friends. I didn't know about his past behavior. He called me, asked about Kada, and we talked for maybe 29 seconds. That's it." But what really set people off was her explanation for why she kept quiet. In her words, "I'm not a cop caller. Where I'm from, we don't talk to the police. That's just the way I grew up." That line alone set social media ablaze. Thousands of people flooded her comments, demanding to know why she'd rather protect her pride than help a missing woman's family. Gabby tried to smooth things over, claiming it wasn't her place to get involved, but it only made things worse. She even recorded a TikTok video trying to clear her name, where she doubled down on her version of events, insisting she had nothing to do with King's actions and that people were twisting the story. But as soon as the backlash grew, Gabby deleted the video and wiped her entire account. The problem for her? It was already too late. Screenshots, downloads, and re-uploads had spread across TikTok, YouTube, and Reddit within hours. The internet, as always, had receipts. Users began dissecting her statements line by line, pointing out every inconsistency. How she went from claiming she barely knew Kada to admitting she grew up with Kada's little sister. How she said she never talked to cops, yet later suggested her friend did call police on her behalf. Nothing was adding up, and every deleted post only fueled the fire. Soon, the public narrative shifted. Gabby wasn't just someone who failed to speak up. She might have enabled King without realizing how deep it would go. Commenters began connecting dots, wondering if Gabby was the second person seen in the surveillance footage helping King that night. Whether that's true or not remains unconfirmed, but one thing's certain. Gabby's attempt to distance herself from the case completely backfired. By the time she tried to erase her story, it was far too late. The internet had already turned her silence into a symbol of complicity, and her own words became the very evidence people used against her. The public reaction to Gabby's involvement has been nothing short of explosive. As soon as her name entered the conversation, social media lit up with speculation. People began piecing together screenshots, timestamps, and even old mugshots, determined to find out what role Gabby really played in Kada Scott's final hours. Because here's where things get unsettling. Despite Gabby's insistence that she barely knew Kada, multiple witnesses say otherwise. They claim the two women had mutual friends, had been seen together at local gatherings, and that Gabby even knew where Kada lived, something she later admitted to King during their last phone call. That revelation sent the internet spiraling. If she barely knew Kada, one user posted on X, why did she tell King where she lived? Others started connecting even more disturbing dots, pointing out that Kada's phone last pinged just blocks away from Gabby's neighborhood before going dark. Coincidence? Or did Gabby know more than she was letting on? As the theories grew, so did the questions about her past. Online sleuths unearthed Gabby's own criminal record, revealing a string of petty theft and obstruction charges from just a few years back, eerily similar to King's own history of violence and deceit. The internet pounced on the connection, calling her King's mirror, suggesting that maybe their friendship wasn't as casual as she claimed. Some theorists went even further, suggesting Gabby may have tipped off police after realizing King had gone too far, while others believe she may have helped him cover his tracks, intentionally or not. One viral TikTok claimed that Gabby was the mysterious second figure caught on camera carrying something heavy beside King that night. Noting her size and build matched the grainy outline almost perfectly. Another theory floated that Gabby could have been the one to set the car on fire, destroying the DNA evidence to protect herself. Of course, none of that has been confirmed by law enforcement, but in the court of public opinion, Gabby's silence has become its own kind of confession. Her refusal to cooperate, her vanishing act from social media, and her cryptic, "I don't talk to cops," line all paint the picture of someone who knows more than she's saying. And it's that silence that keeps fueling the mystery. Was Gabby a scared friend caught in something she didn't understand? Or was she an accomplice who knew exactly what was happening? Because if she barely knew Kada, why did she tell King where she lived? Why did Kada's phone stop near Gabby's neighborhood? And why, after all this, did Gabby vanish online the moment the truth started closing in? Those questions have turned Gabby from a bystander into a central figure in the public's eyes. And until she speaks, the theories will only keep getting darker. Even after all the arrests, the evidence, and the heartbreaking details, there are still gaping holes in the story of Kada Scott's murder. Questions that no one, not even the police, has fully answered. Because here's the chilling truth. Investigators haven't said who gave that final anonymous tip, that led them straight to Kada's body. Someone called it in. Someone knew exactly where to tell police to look, right down to the spot behind the Aubrey Recreation Center. Was it a concerned local? A guilty conscience? Or someone trying to control the narrative before things spiraled out of their hands? And then there's the biggest mystery of all, the second person caught on surveillance footage that night. The one helping Keon King carry what appeared to be a body-sized object into the woods. Law enforcement confirmed they're still working to identify that individual, but months later, no one has been charged. The figure's identity, clothing, and movements were partially obscured by the camera angle. Deliberate or not, it's unclear. But the timing, the size, and the coordination in their movements all point to one undeniable fact. King didn't act alone. Which leads us right back to Gabby. Could she be that person? Was she the one seen beside King that night, helping to hide the evidence? Or was she watching from the sidelines, too scared to come forward? Every time new details surface, her name gets dragged back into the spotlight. And every time, she goes quiet again. What's even more haunting is the timeline. Kada's phone last pinged near Gabby's neighborhood before going silent. Hours later, King was seen at the exact location where Kada's body was dumped. Then, a few days after that, Gabby deleted every trace of herself online. Too many coincidences and not nearly enough answers. So who really tipped off police? Who helped King carry out what looks more and more like a planned cover-up? And why is every person who might have the answers suddenly so silent? Because right now, one thing is certain. Not everyone involved in Kada Scott's murder has been brought to justice. There's still pieces missing, still names unspoken, and still a second figure out there, someone who knows exactly what happened that night. Until those answers surface, Kada's story remains a haunting reminder that the truth doesn't always die with the victim. Sometimes it lingers, waiting to be uncovered. So I want to hear from you. Was Gabby an innocent bystander or part of something much darker? Drop your thoughts below, because as this case unfolds, every detail, every clue, and every unanswered question might bring us one step closer to the truth.